What is up, everybody? It's good friend Lukie, and I'm on to break some news with a boss of boxing, big media empire launching. We got Abraham Gonzalez of many different media outlets, lately ProBox TV, but he's here to announce that he's starting his own website, fightsatw.com. I believe that stands for Fights Around the World. Abe, can you give us a little info on this breaking news?
Yeah, thank you, Lukie, for first having me. I always appreciate it. So I will still be contributing with, or I should say, for ProBox TV, but Fights Around the World, which Fights ATW stands for, is a it's a website that I wanted to start from last year. That I got the idea to do it and started putting the parts together, and it's going to be a site that's not only going to feature boxing content, but also wrestling content. And for both, it'll have independent shows, whether on the wrestling and boxing. Independent wrestlers is going to have up and coming prospects. It's going to be a place where you're going to see a wide range of news in both worlds, and that's going to be from overseas to domestic, Latin America. So I'm really excited about the situation, and I hope that everyone is excited to consume the content as it rolls out.
So don't get mad at Lukey if I say this all wrong. But it's things that you have a deep interest in that maybe major outlets aren't as interested in, like say a Ken Shiro or an Inoue. You and me get excited, but oftentimes you send that to like someone important, and they go, "Well, can we do a Gervonta Davis story?" Just because of the economics of the business. Is this going to focus kind of on some of your loves of obscure wrestling and of obscure fighters to share your passions and pick out personnel to share that stuff?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And yes, for example, like a Kosi Tanaka, not everybody's going to go out and write on a guy like that, but that those are guys that when you watch them, or at least when I watch them, they're exciting to watch and they have a good story behind them. Ken Shiro is another one. So yes, I'd like to do that. And then on the wrestling side, I got, like guys like Danny Limelight, who's tearing it up on the independent screen. And you got wrestlers in New Japan and all these independent promotions across the country. They all have stories that can be told. So I wanna get those out there. Of course, we're gonna hit all the major guys and storylines and everything else, but I wanna really focus in on those guys that don't get the all the big headlines on the major platforms.
To me, it sounds like you're trying to get the CM Punks of the world before they're CM Punk. You're trying to get the Teofimo before Teofimo. You're trying to be something that builds a special relationship with fans by alerting them to new talents before the world knows.
Yeah, and doing it organically, right? I think that's the key word in this all. And we're although we're going to be starting out, we're also partnered with yardbarker.com, which is going to syndicate our content to their audience. And they have a huge audience and platform. And so, our site, you're going to find all our material on. And if someone happens to be on Yardbarker and they don't know about us, they can potentially stumble upon our content there. So very exciting times for us.
And I think we can say breaking news for random obscure boxers I feel compelled to write about. I'm probably going to be a contributor for this website whenever I just decide to do something, which who knows? Maybe sometimes I'm more motivated, sometimes I'm not, but I think I'm going to break that news right now.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. And there are there's a lot of up and coming talent. We have the Olympics coming up here shortly, and so people want to know stories about those fighters that are going to be representing the USA and in the Olympics, and so we're definitely going to be a platform where those stories can be told.
Well, I think a great story that like when in this platform is going that might appear. My first story might be on Sierra Martinez, who fights this Saturday, Olympic trials to be in competition with Alyssa Mendoza if she wins that fight. Not just like I think the with USA boxing, it's always way too complicated to explain it to a normal person. So writing down an article that explains the process, but also explains her journey of and then I had some questions for you that's unrelated, but it's like you get a girl like Sierra Martinez, everything you'd want in a daughter, basically. She joins the army, honor student, doing all these things, not making bad decisions, fantastic boxer. Yet there is no push for her as of right now. There's no, and I think showing that story opens up the door for the ex veteran, for the person that feels weak but sees strength in this girl. So many different peoples could feel empowered by seeing her Olympic journey.
Yeah, and not only that, but it also shows that, just because you volunteer and make a decision to go into military service, that doesn't mean that your dreams and aspirations stop. Like you can still pursue those things, depending on which lane you want to go and who can provide those services. So, yeah, people want to know about that, and there's probably a good portion of people her age in her age group that don't know that they don't know that they can be competing in boxing and be part of the army. So though that's the type of stuff that I want people to get and to understand and to consume, and I think that we're gonna do our best. I'm not thinking, I know we're gonna do our best to get that to the audience.
I think because sometimes I just, sometimes my heart's in the right place. It just doesn't come out all that good. Yeah, but I think that story, I think that's going to be a contribution. Maybe coming this week. This drops Sunday evening. In advance of this big news, probably going to drop really late. So then people might see something in their emails and announce it. But that's something people can look forward to. Okay. 5 questions I came up with on my morning jog for you, Abe. Are you ready for this?
I'm
Should
ready.
boxing awards move to an electoral college system as opposed to every media outlet having awards?
That I'm I don't hate that idea. I actually think that is a really good idea. The only problem is getting everyone together to do that. Everyone has there's a lot of egos in this sport. And I think that I I think it's worth a try, at least, so that we can have one organization or just one, instead of having 50 different ones and everyone with their opinions. I think it's worth a try, at least.
Well, because I'm looking at all these outlets awards, and you can kind of like, for me being someone that's around boxing so much, I can kind of see who they're gearing their readership for. Because it almost seems like the awards are given for this is the upset of the year as a for the biggest fights, for the big main event fights. This is the fight of the year of the fights that most people tuned in for. Or it's just like some people are just going, okay, I think this really is the best fight of the year. Where it gets contentious is fight of the year or fighter of the year, where it's like Inoue or Crawford. And I feel like, as I said on another podcast, I don't think anyone's ever heard an argument and gotten their mind changed. I think it's a fixed belief opinion of writers and fight fans feel one way or the other. And I don't think looking at a meme is going to change someone's opinion.
Yeah, and honestly, like in what you just mentioned, I mean, I'm one that says they should be both. It should be both. And although folks want to disagree with that and feel like that's an easy way out, I don't think it is. I think that both men deserve it. And in a year where there weren't that many fighters who were at that level and competing more than once, uh it's hard to kind of definitively say this guy did it. I think they both have their reasons, and I think they both should be number one.
Okay. That's very professional. Very professional. Does the face of boxing need to be someone that consistently knocks people out at the highest level of the sport for boxing to grow?
I think it's always been that, organically, without us labeling it that way. If you think about it, Tyson in the 80s, right? He was the guy. Um, Foreman, even though he was around the Ali era, he was knocking people heads out, and they were like, everybody was saying, "Hey, this is the guy," right? Until Ali beat him. I think that there's knockouts bring attention to boxing. I feel like it always has and always will be. Even some of the young guys now, without them really knowing what, some of the intricacies of the sport, I heard a lot of casuals say, man, that Day of Reckoning was an awesome card. Well, it really wasn't, but to them it was because there were knockouts in there. And honestly, yeah, I think the face of boxing has always organically become the person that has the most knockouts. And right now that's Gervonta Davis, right? He has all these big knockouts. And although Canelo is in a much wider with a much wider
Don't get
audience.
canceled. Don't get canceled.
He has a much wider audience when it comes to his profile, meaning not only in Latin America, but with golfing and all these other things. So does Gervonta Davis too. Canelo's just been doing it a little longer. And so I think that eventually Tank gets to that level, probably sooner than later. But as long as Canelo's around, I think he's going to be just a little bit more on that side of things.
Okay. Um, Obviously, Better Beef's got a fight coming up. I honestly think Callum Smith is really alive in it because Beterbiev is really old, and I think people act like it's Street Fighter 2, the video game, and then he's just showing up the way he is. Here's the thing. This is what I'm thinking about. He's 19-0 and 19 knockouts. Sure, he had a large point of inactivity in his career, but why does a guy like Beterbiev not connect with people? Like a guy, even like Virgil Ortiz, he's got all knockout wins, yet something about certain fighters go to the forefront. Is it the opponents? Is it that? What do you think? Not all knockout guys are created equal, it seems.
Honestly, I think it's more about making themselves available in the public eye. A lot of these guys disappear after their fights, and you don't hear from them until 4 weeks before their next fight, and that could be 8, 9 months in between. Out of sight, out of mind. We are in a society where we have a short memory spans. And so, if you could be super popular with a big knockout, but then if you're not doing your media rounds afterwards, or we don't hear from you 7, 8 months, then it's on to the next guy, right? And so I think that Crawford kind of learned from that. And if you see after the Spence fight, he was in the public eye more and more and consistently. He didn't disappear like Spence. Spence, disappeared, and now he reappeared only a couple of days ago, which tells me that he might have a fight announcement coming up soon. But since August, he'd been gone, and nobody was really talking about him like that. So I think it's all about being in the public eye uh, consistently, and being out there so that people can be refreshed on what you've done every couple of weeks.
Besides Keith Thurman, who's the worst at that currently?
Ooh.
You like how I
Um,
couldn't give you Keith Thurman because that one's too easy?
yeah, no, I mean, Earl Spence, I would say. I would say Earl Spence. The Charlos. I mean, has anybody outside of the criminal stuff that's been going on, or the charges or whatever that Jamel Charlo was in, from September, nobody heard from him. He was gone. Jamal was gone for a long period of time. Um, even the legendary guys that Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, he kind of disappeared. Maybe not to his own fault, because they were trying to get some fights and things didn't work out. But out of sight, out of mind. People have forgotten a little bit about him, and and what he can be as far as some of those super flyweights and making those matchups. So yeah, that's just a couple that come to mind right away.
So I read Andre Ward's book Killing the Image, and one of the big takeaways to me from it, I'm not sure if I was supposed to take this away, was what is the image? What is the image of a boxer? And I left reading that book, whether intentional or not, was there is a view of boxers as stupid, uneducated, ignorant, gonna spend their money. It's like all these negative connotations. Yet when we look at boxing, there's guys like we could name names, probably name some of the names that are getting arrested, doing foolishness, yet they seem to get rewarded more than they do punished. Guys like Arnold Barbosa don't ever seem to get rewarded, and he's doing everything we ask. Is part of boxing that it's a freak show and people that are just doing bad decisions, people want to tune in and see the car crash? Is it like the nightly news? We never hear about the good in the world. We only hear about the bad because the bad brings the ratings.
So what you said in the beginning, I think, was something that used to be said about boxers, that they're dumb and this and that. I think that the Floyd Mayweather era kind of changed that a little bit in the sense where, you started seeing them more being involved with businesses and starting their own promotions and all those type of things. So I think that there's still a little bit of that out there, but I don't think as much as what it used to be because they're getting smarter. Some are getting smarter with their money than others, but more than what they used to. Now, as far as like the bad boy image, I don't think it's a boxing thing. I think it's just a society thing, and that goes with all sports. I mean, you see it. Draymond Green, he got in trouble or suspended
He's like
indefinitely, and
chokeholding people, elbowing them. John Morant is showing pistols on the internet.
yeah, and so Draymond Green did that, but then Jake Paul was ready to have him get into a like a celebrity boxing match, in one of his events. So yeah, he did. It's almost like you said, he's getting rewarded for his bad actions. I think it's just a society thing. Like everybody, that puts up those videos of people doing dumb stuff and getting hurting themselves and all that. I think that's what it's just what people are attracted to right now. And unfortunately, that sucks for guys that do it the right way because then it almost makes it seem like they're boring because they're living life the right way. Uh, so it is like you can't have it all, and it sucks for those guys. It almost seems like a guy like Arnold Barbosa needs to show up to somebody's press conference and snuff him so that he can get a fight because the guy can't get a fight for nothing.
Well, it's like for me, it's like it. I watch a lot of military and president stuff in my free time, which I'm sure you're like, why would you do that? That was my career. Um, but that's what I do, and it's like when you go into these things, your algorithm starts to be like, do you want to hear about the Compton Bloods? And it's like I'm not that fascinated by that. Like to me, that looks no disrespect to anyone that does that. That's what happens in certain aspects, but that's not something that should be put on the internet and glorified. That's adult decisions people made, and then there are consequences. Not it's different than joining the US Army or the Marines in the sense it's not legal per se, but you have to make a decision to join those things and you can't walk it back once you do it. And I feel like we love vicariously seeing people self-destruct because of the internet. And the people that are more like us are the people, we know that. That's what I do every day. I don't want to see Arnold Barbosa because he reminds me of my uncle. Where's the kid that's just doing all the bad decisions and it's like watching Grand Theft Auto in real life?
Yeah, and like you said, it's almost like we'd rather watch the car crash instead of the fine art, right? And it's just where we're going with things, and I think that you have to find some sort of balance, I guess, and see if that works for. It's funny because Jay-Z once said he was like people are afraid of being themselves. He said that like in a studio session. I think it was the one of the
He's
DVDs that he
not
came out with.
lying.
and he wasn't lying. This was like 15, 20 years ago that he said that people are afraid of being themselves, and they feel like they have to portray this image in order to quote unquote get over, right? And unfortunately, that's where we're at. That's where we're at, and it sucks.
Okay, that transitions perfectly. Do you like my unprepared questions I'm giving you that aren't like your typical boxing podcast interview? Um, is boxing becoming irrelevant in the global stage of things with the fact that it only has one major network it's on? Or is it revolutionary and leading the way into a digital age and possibly going to pick up new fans because it's going to streaming before other sports?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's and you're probably saying to yourself, well, it can't be. No, I think it is. I think it's a little bit of both. It's boxing has lost a lot of fans because of bad decisions and bad stoppages and stuff like that. But I also think that it's going to gain some fans with this with it being on a digital platform or streaming platform like Amazon Prime. I think I saw somebody post a map of the 50 states and who has Amazon Prime and who has Hulu and something else. And it was about 80% of the country has the majority of Amazon Prime subscribers and in there. And so I think that it's going to create an opportunity for boxing to be accepted again. I guess it just depends on how the sport delivers the content. And the sport also has to find new ways to get people's attention for these fights instead of doing it the way they used to do it, because that's just not going to work anymore.
Which promoter needs to have the biggest 2024?
Oof. Um, I feel like Top Rank maybe has to have I mean, I think they all do to a certain extent. I think that everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. I think that Top Rank probably, coming off the heels of Showtime PBC doing a lot of big name events, even if they didn't work out the way we hoped, they still put on the big names. I think Top Rank has something to kind of look forward to in this year, and put some of those big name events up and try to make these big fights
I'll
for
take it
ESPN.
as I'll take it a step further. I think this is a year that in a perfect world, Teofimo Lopez is in contention for fighter of the year. His stardom elevates. Xander elevates into being a guy who can main event and possibly even go towards pay-per-view. And a guy like Keyshawn Davis takes the next step. Like in a perfect world, you'd have four fighters, maybe Abdullah Mason or somebody, but like it really seems since Pacquiao left, Crawford couldn't quite get to where they wanted him to go. And now Teofimo is pretty darn close. He's really entertaining. Fights February 8th. Jermaine Ortiz, very good fight. But I get what you're saying because they need that Manny Pacquiao type figure.
Yeah, and Top Rank to me has always been a promoter that um, is more about treating it as a marathon and not a race. And so they always have the long game in mind. And I think with that being said, like you mentioned, this year might be when that long game starts paying off.
Yeah, I mean, we will see. We will see. Who is the breakout fighter at 2024?
Woo. I'm gonna go, and I've said this a couple of times, but I'm gonna go with the big Chinaman, Big Bang freaking Zhang. I think that he's going to break out, and he is going to be China's next big star.
Okay. I thought you were gonna go like a young guy like Xander. We're going 41 years old. We're going the
Uh,
breakout fighter of the year is gonna be a 40-year-old. I like where this is
well,
going.
the only reason why I say that is because the heavyweight division has always been the glamour division, and people like to pay attention to the heavyweight division. And so if we're talking about from, from like a wide audience, I think that you got to say heavyweights, and Zhilei Zhang is that guy. Now, for the diehards, yeah, it could be a Xander, but also, you know what? Somebody that people don't speak about too much and hasn't been active, but this could be the year that, he gets those fights. What about bad news? Charles Conwell.
I mean, as much as I do. I love some bad news in my life. The Charles Conwell bad news, not bad news, and I like the Charles Conwell bad news. I mean, all he has to do is get fight dates, and you're gonna see something special.
That's a fact. That's a fact. So, we'll see how that goes. Smaller weight classes, maybe you're talking, Ken Shiro becomes even a bigger household name. If Kosi Tanaka gets a big fight, some of those Japanese fighters on that end. You wrote a beautiful piece on like the four kings of Japan.
Can I
And
can I do a funny prelude on that that's not funny? So like I got like a lot of praise for that, which thank you to people, but I actually wrote that in my grandma's hospital room when it
oh,
was really depressing. And it's like that was like my therapy of just doing a very like how I say that and you go, "Oh God." Um like that was my therapy of like let me write something to contribute to Pro Box TV, but also take my mind off of very serious stuff. And I really didn't think it was like that earth shattering. It was more so a coping tool. So when people were like reaching out, "Hey, great article," I'm like, "Really?" Like I thought my Juan Francisco Estrada piece was more earth shattering than this. But that kind of tells you that like it's kind of important if you get into writing or podcasting to put everything out because what you think might matter might be the worst thing ever and the thing that you hate might be the thing that resonates with more people. I think that I'm a big believer in just put out as much as you can because something's going to hit with people.
yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, and man, you got some other guys out there. David Benavidez maybe has a big year, and let's see. It's exciting, but
Okay, well, let's be some haters on the front line. Um, who's going to fall off this year?
ooh,
And you know how we do it, bro. We got to name names because it's not interesting if you don't name names. You got to name names or else you just look lame.
yeah, I think Jamel Charlo falls off this year.
Okay. Yeah, I think it might be that whole squad. I think it might be both Charlos, Errol Spence, Ryan Garcia, and Frank Martin. I think that whole unit might fall off.
And I'm gonna throw one more name in there if one of these fights happens. It might be Canelo if he fights Benavidez in September. I think that he might really. I've been saying this, but I feel like the moment Canelo fights David Benavidez, it is going to mimic when Oscar De La Hoya fought Julio Cesar Chavez, and the result is going to be the same, and it's going to be uh, equivalent in significance of history, where it was the passing of the torch. I stand by that, and I think that if it happens on September, that's what we're going to see.
Okay, now the $1 million question. Now, does it happen?
I think it does happen. I think it happens, and I hate to say it, but I think it happens in Saudi Arabia.
Awesome. I feel like I might be the only one that feels this way, but like I feel like if boxing becomes something that's only in Saudi Arabia, I might not watch that much boxing. Like I'm just not that interested in following a sport that overlooks a country with a huge human rights issue in the past. And the fact that boxing is such a willing accomplice to not like even have the backbone to talk about these issues kind of bothers me.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, but it's just not boxing though. Everybody's getting into it, whether it's soccer or whether it's baseball now. I think Dubai or one of those countries in the UAE are doing that. They're doing baseball now with all these old veterans. Like everybody's getting into into that space, and they're trying to make it the number one tourist attraction in the world. And the only way you do that is by acquiring all these different pieces. The WWE is doing it, and so man, I hear what you're saying, but at the end of the day, what matters is that almighty dollar, at least in our currency. And as long as that is being uh, put out there, they're gonna keep doing it.
And I could just be holier than thou because it could be like Saudi Arabia comes to me, hey, we'll listen to every single thing you want to do. We'll let you have complete freedom and just talk about boxing. And then I'm like, oh, this is great. So it could also be like when you're not involved and you don't, because like everybody in every industry, when you get to a certain level, it's tough because you want more freedom. Like that's the nature of being successful. Once you get paid, you just want freedom. When you're not getting paid and you have total freedom, you want to get paid. It's like there's always like the happy medium. I don't know because with golf, the fact that Saudi Arabia has entered into golf, it's really killed my interest in professional golf because it's really made it uninteresting.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think that at some point we're gonna have to tell ourselves to move past it and say this is the new norm, and we're just gonna have to accept it until we're told otherwise.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's kind of strange that yeah, I don't know. It's a very strange thing because it's like there's freedom of speech is something that really matters to me, and that's not something that happens in Saudi Arabia, and that's never addressed. And I guess where I see boxing going is more state-run boxing programs, the promoter having complete control over the broadcast and basically just telling you who's good and who's bad, regardless of what's happening.
Yeah, and then I mean, with the Olympics, I guess leaving boxing or whatever they're trying to figure out there, it might very well be that. And we may get more like club show-ish type stuff here in the US with all the main events going to Saudi. So more club shows, less big events.
Hey, last 6 minutes. Let's talk about flights ATW. What are some of the big pieces coming to the website to launch?
Yeah, so on the wrestling side, I'm gonna start with that. I've got a full feature from Thomas Gerbasi on Danny Limelight and what he's going to bring in 2024. Danny Limelight is one of the hottest independent wrestlers out there, and so that piece is coming. There's a piece on one of the authors of a new Randy Macho Man Savage book that's coming out, so that'll be on there. And then on the boxing side, we're just going to get on all these features for the fighters coming up and coming up on these next few events, and some young guns out there that are like your guy Charlie Shee, and then see what's going on, and kind of feature those guys and let everybody start knowing who they are and following their journey.
Yeah, probably a Lukie Sierra Martinez deep dive. And get barring that Sierra we're taping this before she fights on Saturday. Um, assuming she wins, then just an in-depth profile piece with quotes from her dad and Sierra and possibly the coaches. How
Yeah.
crazy would that be? A well-researched boxing article. It's almost something that shouldn't happen in boxing.
Yeah, and we these are all fighters that potentially have an opportunity to reach gold in the Olympics. And so, getting that story out now, and getting everybody ready and prepared for that, I think is important, especially for those that are going out there to represent the country.
Perfect. So where can people follow you? All that stuff. I know you have a really popular account on Pornhub. But besides that, what other outlets can we see on?
Yeah, so Fights Around the World is going to be fightsatw.com. That is the website. It's going to be at FightsATW on Twitter and Facebook, and FightsATW24 on Instagram. Very excited for this. Lukie, again, I thank you and appreciate you for having me on this platform. Fights ATW, Fights Around the World. It's new and it's coming, and I hope you guys enjoy all the content that we're going to be producing.
That's Abe G. I'm Lukey. We're out. Go to Fights ATW. It'll change your life.